Number 6, outcomes can be ranked in order, so I said that, from maximal to minimal, right? So we're going to rank it maximum to minimum number of casualties, CAS, UALTIES. So we're going to rank it in order from maximum to minimum number of casualties. Okay, so that's the next part of the game. So again, still very ethereal, a little in the clouds, but I'll ground it in a little bit. Alright, so next thing, assumptions in the war game and game tree. So what are our assumptions? Assumptions. First assumption. We're assuming that actors are rational, right? You have to assume that actors in the game are rational, meaning that they're going to try and act in their own best interest, right? We're not assuming that actors are going to act against their best interest. So you have to assume that actors are rational. Second, we're assuming that actors seek to minimize their total number of casualties, right? If it's a game of war, then this is, you know, and just as a quick side note, I remember being a kid and playing Risk and stuff. It was like, that was my first introduction to sort of like strategic planning, right? If you're strategizing, the very fact that you're entertaining a strategic plan to implement within a war means that the goal of that plan is for success in the war. And depending on how you weigh success in the war, whether it is preventing a genocidal regime from continuing to execute innocent lives, whether it's minimizing the number of casualties that you have, whatever it might be, all of those outcomes require strategy. So you can't just go, you can't have an outcome and say, I want to attain this, whatever that might be, in a state of war, through an act of war, right, without recognizing a specific strategy, right? And that strategy isn't just going to involve my actions, it also has to anticipate the actions or the actions or counteractions of my opponent, right? So in quote unquote, like in Sun Tzu's sense, in the art of war, you know, it's not just about me knowing myself. It's about me knowing my enemy as well as I know myself, right? Because I have to factor into, and I'll get into this in a second, I have to factor into my strategies the likelihood and possibility of the decision-making capacity of my enemy, to be technical, right? So 2 is actors minimize total number of casualties, right? We want to keep our casualties low. CASUALTIES. Number 3, no actor, this is an important point too, right? No actor knows the decision of other actors in the game, right? In war games, you don't know what the other person's going to do. You think and you try to contemplate all of the possible actions that the actor will make, but you don't know it. This is where Zizek's sort of commentary on Rumsfeld was so interesting to me, because I work in sort of war theoretics and war strategy quite a bit, and I'm extremely interested in sort of strategic planning, because it's probably the only immediately verifiable proof of sort of the confluence between theory and action, right? Analysts sit down at, let's say, the DoD and say, hey, here's what we need to implement, based on my understanding of all this information, all the intel that we've gathered from what we know, man on the ground, woman on the ground, based on this information, let's do action X. Action X is contingent based on a sequence of strategies and assumptions of our enemy's responses to those sequences. We think this is going to be, and I'll explain this in a second, we think this is the best strategy. Present it to the president or the general, whatever. They execute the strategy. Our forces have huge casualties because of that strategy. What in the world went wrong, right? You're talking about humans' lives, right? So people who do this for a living, right? Their strategies lead to either the success or the death of people. That's what I'm saying. What's important about this stuff is to recognize, yeah, they're always like, oh yeah, you know, philosophers and theorists, yeah, your minds are always in the clouds. this is a precise moment where, no, it is precisely at this point where what is theoretically contemplated is put into practice, and we're going to see what's going to happen, like in a day or two. These people are going to die, we're going to win, it's going to be successful or not, and so on. And you take that information back and reabsorb, reintegrate that information into the new system, into the new game, to make a more successful game. And what ends up happening based on information, obviously the game becomes more efficient with an increase in information, right? I didn't put that in here, and I probably should have, so I'll put like 3A, right? Increased info increases the efficiency of the game, right? We need to know as much as we can know. So sort of in the Rumsfeldian sense, it's not really even Zizek, it was more Rumsfeld. The known knowns are what's important. We know that we know this. That's going to help us anticipate our enemy's moves. We know that we don't know this. Insofar as we're talking about game construction, game construction functions only on those two levels. The unknowns don't factor into game theoretics at all. You can't anticipate an unknown because there's nothing there. So as far as the game tree is concerned, game trees are only going to be concerned with what we know that we know and what we know that we don't know. The unknown and the even more insane known unknown, it doesn't factor at all, right? What we know that we know is really going to help to solidify our strategies. What we know that we don't know is going to allow us, this becomes the possible. Right? The unknown known, the known unknown creates possibility, and I'll get into this, right? Creates possibility, and again, I don't want to make it too complicated, right? And I feel like I'm already starting to make it too complicated. But the known unknown, what we know that we know that they have bombs. We know that we don't know how many bombs we don't have. You can imagine if we don't know how many bombs we have, we're going to have to build a strategy based on the fact that we know that there are bombs, but we don't know how many. And then it becomes, okay, greatest possible number of bombs, least number of bombs, let's construct based on that, blah, 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 blah. All of that, the known unknown creates possibility in the game, which isn't necessarily a bad thing or a good thing. It just adds another dimension to our decision-making process. Okay, and then number 4, the last thing is that decisions, I'm not going to write it down, I'll just say it, decisions are irreversible. There is no, oh, I made a decision, I have to take it back, right? There's no taking back. I know that sounds like so 5-year-old. But, like, I said he's an idiot. Oh, I take it back. I know, once you said he's an idiot, you said he's an idiot. That's going to escalate the conflict between you and whoever you called an idiot. It's sort of hard to take back calling somebody an idiot. Oh, I didn't mean to call you an idiot. You called me an idiot. You think I'm an idiot? I mean, that's not cool. So actions in this game are irreversible. Once you make a decision at a particular point in the game, once that decision is made, there's no reversing the decision. The decision's been made. Okay, so decisions are irreversible in the game. Again, we haven't gotten to the game, just some of the theoretical constructs of the game. Alright? Next part. Identifying parts of the game. So now we're going to start to talk about the game parts so that you understand. Just like I did in my not truth tree. I think there were truth trees. And when I was constructing truth trees in symbolic logic, I talked about various parts, and some of the parts have the same names in this. Like I said, they're 2 different formulations, but the structure is going to look roughly the same. So a dot in the game, that dot represents a decision node. Right? This dot represents what's known as a decision node. Right? And this is an individual point or an individual instance of a decision. So a decision node is this. Viewer, you can either go left or you can go right. You can either go left or you can go right. And you say, well, I want to go left. That opportunity to choose from options is classified as a decision node. Right? So this decision node, more specifically, is an opportunity to choose between B/between options. This is very, very important. I don't have the time to go into this now. There's another version of game tree construction which is way more theoretical and way more complicated. As a preview, I did a video called Popcorn Flavored Ice Cream, which is way out there, about a year ago. It talks about sort of this idea of options and choice. I can't get into it now, but if you're interested, you can watch. Just put in my search terms on my homepage of my YouTube page, popcorn, and hit enter. It'll come up. Watch Popcorn Flavored Ice Cream. It might give you some sense of this idea. I'm not going to get into it now because it complicates things way too much. But you can go, I think this is for you, this is your right. So you can go right or you can go left. Whatever choice you make is inconsequential at this point. The opportunity to choose at that point is a decision node. You have, at the decision node, the ability to make a choice. Those choices are contingent on the options that you have. And those options eventually lead to some outcome. So that's what the decision node is. So this is a decision node.